Hi there, my name's Ted Hargrave, and welcome to another edition of the YouTube Radical Business Marketing Coaching Series focused on your irresistible offer. So we've been talking about the niche, and we're talking about the offer. Last episode we talked about the three criteria of a good offer, that it's relevant, credible, and valuable to people. And so those are sort of the three keys, but when we're looking at designing an offer, when I'm sort of looking at working with somebody on an offer, those are sort of the three big things, but there's kind of two main things I look at with this. Come back here. This is going to seem painfully simple, but it's actually very profound. The first is you got to look at what do they want, and second is what do they don't want. What do they not want? It's pretty simple, but you'd be surprised how few people really give this much thought. So we're looking at what they want, and when we look at what they want, there's really two parts of this. And actually, there's two parts of both of these. I don't know how to draw this. So again, there's two parts of both of these. One is the product or service itself. There's going to be things that you want to make irresistible about that, but there's also things you want to make irresistible about the process of buying it. You've all, unfortunately, probably had the experience where you went to a store to buy maybe some electronic equipment, but the salesperson pissed you off so much that you actually left and went to another store. Maybe you've had friends who've had this happen. The product or service was great. It was fine. It worked really well. In fact, it was exactly what you were looking for. But the salesperson was so obnoxious it pissed you off. I was in Seattle recently, and there was a fellow who does a lot of landscaping stuff and would rent U-Haul vans pretty often, like probably 50 times a year he would rent them. The U-Haul truck worked fine. It's a great truck, or the trailers rather. They worked perfectly, but every time he went in, it took him 45 minutes to fill out the paperwork, to get the U-Haul truck. They never remembered him. They never, he had to re-enter his information every time. And you can imagine, even by the third time, that was frustrating. After like 50 times, he was ready to tear his hair out. They had no system for that. Nobody remembered his name when he walked in, even though he was there all the time. And it just seemed like they hired people, and their instructions were just like, do not care about the customer. Don't even try. Just listen to your iPod all day and ignore them when they come in and treat them like they're a hassle. So it's not just the product or service, it's also the process. When you're buying a car, it's not just the car that matters, it's the interaction with the salesperson. And there's a reason there's a slimy sales car archetype out there. And there's the Latin phrase caveat emptor, which means let the buyer beware. So this interaction between the salespeople and the prospects isn't new. This has been going on for thousands of years, people getting screwed. So we want to look at what do they want, what don't they want. And this gets to this is so powerful as a process to go through, and I invite you to consider it. And it's looking at the idea in terms of what we don't want of industry frustrations. What are the industry frustrations? And in terms of what they want, I have spaced this very poorly, something called the customer values. You probably won't be able to read this. Customer values. The customer values, the question we ask ourselves with the customer values is what's most important to them when buying X, when buying what we sell. Not buying from you personally, not buying from your business, but what's most important to them when buying, if you do landscaping, what's most important to people when buying landscaping? If they're buying a fence, what's most important to them when buying a fence? If they're buying supplements, what's most important to them when buying supplements? And to know that people do have criteria, things that matter to them when they're buying. So that's one question to ask yourself. But the second question is, what are their frustrations with the industry? One of the things I do at the weekend is I have people, one of the very first things on the Friday night, I have people sit down and bitch about their worst business experience they've ever had, a time where they really got screwed or taken advantage of. And probably not just screwed, but then when they went back to complain about it or to see if they could get it resolved, they got screwed again. And people will share that, and it's interesting, it's very hard to stop them. People are very passionate about talking about their bad business experiences and talk about it like 3 or 4 or 5 times more than they even do their positive ones. So people will go out of their way to let folks know. And I'll usually have one person share an example. And so it was interesting with the U-Haul example in Seattle. There were some really specific things that came out about the waiting, about the lack of personalized service. When I did one, they were complaining about the plumber they'd had, and the plumber had showed up late. And first of all, given them just a huge time frame, but then he even showed up a little later than that. They had not fixed it right the first time, so they had to come back and fix it, and they charged more for that. And they also charged more than the original quote. Just even for the first job, before they screwed it up, they charged more than they had originally quoted. And it was so frustrating. The person was so just livid about it. But there's some important things here, is that, first of all, he's not the only person who's had that experience with that plumber. I can virtually guarantee it. That plumber's probably done that to a lot of people. But second, it's probably not just that plumber, if that makes sense. This is what's called an industry frustration. There's probably a lot of plumbers who do this in that industry. A lot of plumbers do the same thing. If you can know what those are, and what are your clients' and prospects' frustrations with your industry, because I sad to be the one to break the news, but people are pissed off about your industry. There are people who have frustrations, they're skeptical about it, and if you can identify what those are and then handle them and address them directly. Imagine if you'd just been screwed by a plumber like that, and you were talking to a friend, they said, oh my gosh, I've got this plumber, and here's what he did. Because you know how people have that frustration, like they either show up late or they say, I'll be there between 2 a.m. and midnight. This plumber says he'll be there on time, and if he's more than 30 minutes late, the job is free. Number 2, he guarantees that he will never charge more than the original quote. He makes sure he quotes accurately, and if something comes up that he wasn't able to, he pays for it. It's on his dime. And if he has to come back and fix the same issue, if he didn't fix it right the first time, he does it for free. It's all guaranteed. You would be so thrilled. You'd just be, tap dancing. Next time you had an issue, that's the person you would call. So these are the 2 parts, again, of the offer. What do they want? What's most important to them when buying what you sell? And what are their frustrations with the industry? And if you can combine both of those and design your product and your service to make sure you meet those needs, and again, not just the product or service, but the whole process, what happens before they buy, what happens during the process, and what happens after in terms of the follow-up, if you can think that all through, you're going to create an offer that is just pretty kick-ass. So thanks so much for watching. Again, at the end of this video, there's a website you can go to where you can download a free report. It's about 70-80 pages long. That'll help you walk through in a lot more detail than we can go through in these little YouTube segments. So I hope this was useful, and thanks for watching.